My name is Neil with Life in Low Range. We're talking about fit in 40s. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, leave a comment below about what size tires you have on your vehicle. You may recognize Chuck Norris, my 2004 Jeep TJ Unlimited, or LJ. We did a whole video about how the LJ is notably one of the most desirable off-road platforms in production ever. Now, the problem with my particular LJ was that some yahoo hammered through the back end of Chuck, which you're gonna have to hang out and hear more about that story later in this video. Now, 40s are like the new 37s. Everybody out there at some point in time has daydreamed about putting 40s on their Jeep. And that's what we're gonna tell you about today. 40s aren't for everyone. And we still actually have a bunch of regulatory issues with some of our local trail systems, our organized trail rides, and some of our national events in general with running 40s or bigger tires on their local trails. Make sure you check into your particular interest before you commit to something where now you can't use your rig. With that said, 40s require a whole bunch of extra work. There is a combination of components needed to ensure that not only do you have the 40s, but that you can then use the Jeep both on and off road. It brings me back to a character online who, I kid you not, he bought a stock JK. This cat did basically nothing to his vehicle except for hack the heck out of his fenders, and he stuck 40s right on a stock Jeep. While he was physically able to clear the tires, and a lot of people, a lot of keyboard warriors jumped on and were like, you can't do anything with that Jeep. He was like, yes, I can, watch me drive it. And he went to the gas station and he, posed on like on a curb. Okay, you did it, you did a thing, but it doesn't mean you did it well. What does it mean to actually do it well? And there's a number of those things that go into doing it well. And I'll unpack that in this video as we go forward. We're gonna talk about lifts, we're gonna talk about flares, and maybe some other modifications. And then eventually we'll get to, is this a good fit for you? As far as lift is concerned, understand that there are a couple different schools of thought when it comes to doing a quality install. One is gonna be what's called a low center of gravity build, or LCG. And the other is gonna be just kind of jack it up until it fits. Now, there is a particular import suspension manufacturer. They do offer some really gnarly high lift kits out there for your JLs, your JTs, and your JKs. But realistically, with those three platforms, you arguably want to be between 4 and 6 inches. Chuck Norris, that you've already been introduced to, Chuck is technically only 2 inches of lift, but it's a functional 2 inches of lift, and it's got high clearance flares. When it comes to our body line, our turning radius, and the ability to articulate and turn, you really need to find a sweet spot of about 4 to 6 inches on a 1-ton spring mount perch. Why I say that is because 1-ton axles are just a little thicker, the perch is just a little higher. Equally, if you were to do one of the reputable aftermarket manufacturers who offer truss systems or replacement coil spring mounts and so on and so forth, those are going to give you just a little bit more motion in the ocean, a little more room for activities. If you have those bigger axle tubes or bigger spring mount perches, you're closer to the 4 inches. If you're on more of a stock configuration, you realistically want to push to the 6. I'll be absolutely honest with you, if I had my options to do it on a JL right now, I would absolutely be looking at a 6-inch lift kit. Now, part of that not only has to do with a stationary sitting or just driving to and from the grocery store, but realistically, when you get the Jeep all twisted up in the rocks and your ability to turn and pivot while the suspension is fully articulating. My recommendation is, if you're interested in 40s, you're gonna definitely wanna jump in. If you have a JK, JL, or JT, that's a Wrangler or Gladiator platform, you're gonna jump in the 4 to 6 inch lift range. Big honking axles are gonna be necessary if you think that you're gonna go to the big leagues. This absolutely comes down to basic science. The rotating mass of this tire is simply different than what the Jeep was originally designed to push around the road or the trail, which is another thing that will become very important when you upgrade your tire size. You need to restore the engineered power band of whatever power plant you have by increasing numerically the gear ratio of the axles. So that's going to be front and rear, and you're going to want to increase up into the 5s. Now, honestly, I'd love to increase into the 6s, but we don't actually have that option available to us in our industry. So 513s and 538s it is. Tons are the answer for everybody. Now, I know financially it doesn't always work out. It took me 6 years to build the junkyard tons that are under Chuck Norris. There was some trial and error. There was some inconsistencies and parts and pieces that were available. Then ultimately we had to fabricable the mounts that made the geometry very appropriate in the front and the rear for the 4-link and the 3-link. Now, don't get me wrong, we used R-Tech in the front and Iron Rock Off-Road in the rear, and they took a lot of the smarts out of it for us, but there's still a good bit of fit and finish that has to be done to ensure it works well on and off-road. Dana Spicer, Curry, Dynatrack, Fusion, they've taken all of the guesswork out of it for our JK, JL, and JT owners, and realistically, Johnny 5's axles showed up in crates, beautiful as they are, and were installed within a couple days. They're robust, they're overbuilt, the gear ratio has already been changed, and within reason, the 40s slip right on, and the rest of the Jeep is ready to go. If you are thinking about going to tons, understand that wheels are almost always 8-lug, and they are a traditional 8-on-6.5 unless you're a Ford, and then your pattern doesn't matter. The rest of us are laughing at you. If you're going to go to 40s on a 5-lug, understand that you are going to be utilizing the front hub assembly way beyond what it was originally designed for. Yes, JL hub assemblies are really solid, but realistically, if you've got a 40 on a TJ hub assembly or a JK hub assembly, and then honestly, if you're looking to wheel a JL on a 5-lug press-on hub assembly, you are on borrowed time. It's not an if, but a when that hub completely grenades. From there, big brakes are critical. Again, if we're talking about putting that simple math of big, heavy, rotating mass of bigger wheels and bigger tires, brakes have to be able to slow the rig down. So if you're relying on that stock JK or stock TJ or Cherokee or whatever braking system, you are simply working beyond potential for that brake system. Upgrading to big brakes or the 1-ton brake packages will completely satisfy the issue for you. Now, one of the challenges, if you are one of our later model TJs, XJs, so on and so forth, swapping to tons is then going to be fluid capacity and the pressure of actually pushing the big brakes of this. If you are brave enough to try and run 40s on your stock 30 and 44 configuration, or God forbid 35 configuration in the JKs, understand that there are sleeve kits, trusses, C-gusset reinforcements. All of those things will benefit you in increasing lifespan of that specifically front axle, and we would definitely recommend you trust the rear axle. Upgrading all of those components to the best of your ability will definitely be a key for longevity. As I mentioned, hub assemblies will be a weak link, and overall U-joints will be a weak link in that system. Drive shafts are a great opportunity to upgrade at this time. I love the recipe of a 1350 drive shaft in the rear of the Jeep and a 1310 hybrid in the front. And when I say hybrid, you can either give us a call or James Adams or any of his crew at Adams Drive Shaft, and they'll kind of walk you through what my hybrid recipe is to ensure that you're not overbuilt in the front so that it is an engineered weak spot in the driveline, but ultimately drive shafts are built so well by those guys, you really don't have to worry about it there either. I think we're pretty good on additional modifications. I need you to let me know if I missed something. Understand this comes from a position where I have heinously put big oversized tires on rigs that were totally ill-equipped in my younger years. And I own that now. And I want to share that so you do a little better than I did. Some additional modifications that are going to be needed. Now, Chuck is a little bit of a saggy bottom boy, and you're gonna find out about that upcoming in this video, so stay tuned. But for the time being, we're gonna talk about some of the additional modifications necessary to ensure that we clear these big meats on your rig. What's become incredibly popular over the last 15 years are going to be what's called high clearance flares. Thanks to Jeep for recognizing the importance of this, they actually now give us an increased clearance on our Rubicon flares. But realistically, prior to our JL and JT Rubicons, we had just relatively a stock flare package on all of our Jeeps prior. Luckily for the rest of us, Bushwhacker, TNT Customs, a couple other manufacturers started to recognize the value of just a nice, clean, open wheel well look, which gave us increased travel for our tires. So high clearance flares become incredibly important to ensure that we have complete movement of the tire within the wheel well opening. If you have any questions about fitting a 40+ tire on your rig, now it should be a Jeep. I'll try to answer other platforms, but realistically, Jeep expert, not a Toyota expert, certainly not a Nissan expert, and absolutely don't care about Fords. Now, I daydreamed for many, many years about building Chuck Norris. And as I mentioned before, it took a long time to get everything dialed in perfectly. Unfortunately, that was taken away from me in one moment, in one night, and now Chuck is very sad. I'm gonna have to make time to figure out exactly what's going on with Chuck. But before we show you that in an upcoming video, you're gonna have to hang in there and watch the video coming up and find out what happened to Chuck. Here is literally the scene of the crime. Now, it is important to note that the Blazer of Trails is rescuing Chuck Norris, and I'm okay. I'm man enough to admit that. So it was sitting there. The young woman fell asleep at the wheel, let's call it that, in her very offensive, new to her, Pontiac Grand Prix, came screaming down the road. I was in bed, just laid down inside, so not too far in there. You never heard any brakes. There was no squealing of tires. There was nothing like that traditional stuff we hear in accidents. Nope, it just was boom, hit the Jeep. It came from back there up into the front yard and settled in this vicinity here, some of it over there. It made me very sad, and you know, she didn't have insurance. So that's cool. But we're gonna make the best of it anyways. Chuck Norris is he's got kind of a saggy bottom at the moment. You can see remnants of the Pontiac, the offending Pontiac. You see that white kind of all over there. I left this alone for you all at home so you can either rejoice or cry with me, whatever it is. And she came in, and I think what ended up happening was she hammered underneath of the Jeep, popped it up. She came all the way forward and she bent the steel wheel, blew the tire off the bead, so probably the belt on the tire damaged, destroyed at this point. And I'm a little concerned because right now there is too much gappage here and not enough gappage here. That's not how Chuck usually wears his shoes. So right now we're gonna go ahead and take the spare off the back. We're gonna throw it on the here tire. We'll swippy swappy around. These 40s are really heavy. It's important to note that Chuck Norris is an automatic. If you watched our most recent podcast of the 42 RLE Flavor, which that transmission sucks already, and that means that the way that she hammered the Jeep and ramrodded it from there to here means that she did it all against that automatic transmission's parking pin. Now, I did fire up Chuck in a bit of frustration once the police had written their reports, and I did drive it off of her vehicle up into the driveway where it sits now. So I do know that it runs and drives and moves under its own power, and it parks, so that's good. Davey, I think we have to go back to the shop. I think we need the lug nut key. All right, try numero dos, because this time I actually have the lug nut keys. You can see her car definitely impacted that. I don't see too much of a stress line, but she obviously came in, smashed her car into that. This belt is probably goobered up, any sidewall belts. It'll be a good off-road tire. Oh, the faux hawk's getting in on it. That was official faux hawk work there. Good. All right, usually I would recommend torquing these, but right now this is just a matter of getting this down on the ground and getting it walked over to the shop. You can see that my coilover mount is all goobered up. So that might be part of why the axles push forward. I don't know, we'll figure that out once it gets to the shop. Chuck has still got kind of that gangster lean. So the part that I'm not looking forward to, legitimately the worst, is putting that spare on that spare tire carrier. And if you've ever seen the man behind the camera, he is equally my size, but way cuter. And I would love for him to be helping me with this, but who then's gonna film? Me struggling, put the tire up there. Oh my God, we're putting it in the Trailblazer. Oh, I'm so excited about that. Boom, okay. Here we go. Who's grabbing? I forgot to grab. Well, that's not gonna work. Ooh, bear hug. Oh, Trailblazer.
What if I hopped in there and held it down?
What if I hopped in there and held it down? Okay, that's all you. Get on top. This is a closed course, safety first. All precautions have been taken, parental release forms have been signed, and it is taking place in a perfectly legal and acceptable closed facility.
All right. Hey, wait. Does this window open so I can hold it down?
Well, then people might see you.
Oh.
On the closed course. 42 RLE shift. Embrace the mad scientists. Count to 5 once it's in gear. The moment we've all been waiting for. She's mint. He's mint. Chuck is back. My beat blown 40 is back. We're gonna break it down, see if there's any damage to the tire to the best of our ability. Chuck rode like hot garbage on the ride over, so that has me a little worried. I'm not thrilled about that. So we'll have to get that and check it out. I don't know when, because we have no free time with all of the Jeeps that we have. We're working on, you know, I just didn't plan on this. So we're gonna try and make the best of it. So we're gonna go ahead and tear into it, see if our geometry's off. I think the axle's a little cattywampus. You'll just have to stay tuned, see how we fix it. If I fix it, I'm definitely gonna fix it. And maybe what the next big upgrades for Chuck will be. So here was the offender in the flesh. Was a pretty decent Pontiac Grand Am at one time. The person had only had it for about 30 days. You can actually see the auction numbers, the lot numbers are still on the windshield and all. So needless to say, I'm pretty angry at this car. I wish the owner the best, and I'm glad that she was unharmed in the situation. The airbag did deploy. I don't know what was happening or what the circumstances were, but obviously this car fought Chuck Norris and lost, and now I own it to prove that point. Chuck Norris.